We want to thank River City Insurance and Duran Creative for being our episode sponsor. This week in the chair, we have Naomi Tillery-Wiggers. Naomi is going to share some very personal stories from her past and how those affected her and helped shape her into the woman she is today.
So my role at the Chamber membership engagement, my role really is just to connect our membership and help engage our membership in our community through their membership. I think a lot of that falls with trying to learn who they are, learn about the business they either own or are involved in, and really what their goals are and how does that align with their membership. And so, okay, how does that work? And when I came on board as a volunteer a long time ago, I was new to Salem. I didn't know anyone. I was volunteering for a nonprofit at the time. And they said, hey, can you go to this meeting on Friday? I was like, sure, I guess. Where is it? What time? And I remember when I showed up for the first meeting, air quotes, AKA greeters. I remember walking in and thinking I was in the wrong place. And I thought, I'm about to be sold some Amway. This is not a meeting. Meeting is like this, or there are a couple of people, but they're not like a convention of people either. And it's very overwhelming if you've never been the first time. But I quickly, just this welcome feeling that you get when you walk in that room, even as large as it is. But I think what I quickly learned is Salem is a relationship-built town. It's all about the relationships. At the end of the day, you'll do business, right? But it's really about who you are. Tell me about your family. Tell me about, did you grow up here? Are you a transplant? I mean, all those things that make us who we are. And then people do business naturally with each other. Mm-hmm. It's that because that comfortability is there. So quickly learned that. And just dove right in through my positions that I held and being on that membership side, and became an ambassador in 2013. Somewhere along the line, probably I think it was in 2016, I became the chair and co-chair and chair of the Chamber of Business Women Group. And then in 2018, 2019, I became co-chair and chair of the Greeters Group. Mm. So I took Greeters into COVID. So my time as chair. So, but along the way, I've made really great relationships. I mean, you take a girl who didn't even have Salem on her radar 14 years ago. I wasn't even like, Salem where? I lived in Spokane at the time. So my best friends have come out of this group.
Paint a picture of your current role. Like with me and Olga, you came to our office and mm-hmm. we got coffee, and it was a little bit different because you had been tracking with the chair, and we'd already corresponded.
Right.
But if that wasn't the case and it was just a new business,
mm-hmm.
Is it usually like, let's grab some coffee, mm-hmm. and you're not only trying to meet them and just get to know them and have some faces with names, but when you say find out what they want to get out of it, or what their what does that look like?
Yeah.
Or what are the things that they? And I'm literally asking this for myself as well, because when Olga and I started this almost 2 years ago now, I think we met with Michelle mm-hmm. when we first got in here a year ago, and she kind of went through, the different stuff, and we were just like, do we want to join and be a member? And if we do, we probably need to actually get involved and do mm-hmm. something, or otherwise, I don't know if it will really benefit us much mm-hmm. if all we do is pay a due, but a fee, but not go to anything, mm-hmm. So even when I'm asking these questions, I'm still trying to understand really what are all the things with the chamber and how you guys function. And
the chamber is advocates for business. So the work that we're doing is ongoing, whether you can make it to a Greeters or some other networking group or event that we have. The work that we're constantly boots on the ground. We're the eyes and ears of the things that are coming that's going to impact our businesses, whether it's through taxes or bonds or new laws or, you name it, things that are going to impact business. It is our job to keep our hands on the pulse of those things and bring it to our members in real time so they can be aware of what's coming that's going to impact their businesses. So from that standpoint, that's ongoing. So that is what you're investing in when you become a member, that you're investing into our work to make sure that we are bringing you this and then we're constantly out there advocating for you as your business. As far as your involvement, that's so it's one way going this way, right? Mm-hmm. That's us. Coming in is your making the decision on how you want to get involved. If you're an introvert and you're like, I don't know if going to Greeters is my thing, let's talk about that. I don't want you to feel that you can't engage with membership, other members or other business peers because that's your thing, but you need to. Well, let's think about that. So maybe I work with you and find some one-on-one ways. So we're like, okay, let's identify some people that you want to connect with and let's do a one-on-one with that. If you're, I'm a networking person, I want to get involved. Well, where can you best use your time? Because there's a bandwidth to your time. Mm-hmm. And you've come to Greeters, so you can kind of you get that, right? So you can see it does feel a little bit like you're going to get sold some Amway because they're so excited and they genuinely love each other and love supporting and championing each other's businesses. Because you heard from all the shout outs, right?
That was a good experience. It wasn't, I didn't go into that for that.
Right.
I went there because Jason is now a friend of mine, and he was like, "Hey, I'm hosting Greeters at the gym," and actually, I might be the assistant coach for the team this season. I was at a practice last night. I'm going to go again probably tonight. So we'll see. But anyways, and now we're friends. Me and Jason are friends, and so I was like, "Oh, I'll go to this," because Zach has asked me to come, and John Moore has asked me to come, and so and really that's. Greeters is kind of where I started scoping out some of the people that I've had on here, was because I'm not a Salem guy either. So I'm looking around and who are the Salem people? And as I start this, who are the people that really know a lot of the other people? And so I'm like, okay, I'll go to the gym and support Jason and listen to whatever he has to say or whatever the functionality of Greeters is. And there was certainly more people there than I thought would be there. And it's a big gym, so it could fit a lot more than someone smaller, just office setting.
Right.
And then you came up and gave me a hug, and then I think it was I asked you hey, how does this work? And you were like, oh, each person will stand up and say, and I'm like, oh. Man, but it was cool. I'm not gonna lie, it was cool to stand up, and when I said the chair, that multiple people cheered and shouted it out. So that was neat to kind of see that response, and because I can't see who listens or who watches. I can see the amount of people that listen or watch, but I don't know who it is. So that was my first kind of being out in the public saying, hey, I'm the chair guy, and the response. So that was neat. And some of the people came up and afterwards and asked, and, we talked about doing an episode with a few of the people. And, I can see how these events can be helpful. And I'm kind of both. I can be outgoing, but I think by nature I'm an introvert. When I'm home, I'm just chilling.
Right.
I'm not a busybody at all. But then trying to be an entrepreneur and a business guy, you gotta put yourself out there at times too, and go meet people, and so it was neat. It was nice to get that kind of reception to the chair and what's being built. So.
I think that is proof that you keep doing what you're doing, right? And if that's your passion work, you just you stick with it. And I think that when you do that, you never know who's listening and who's watching. Yeah. And I think that's a testament to who was listening and who was watching. And there's probably more than that for sure. But that day you got a glimpse into that. And that's kind of like, we're all watching each other. We just don't always know that. And you know, when you're trying to find like, where do I want to spend my time now? Unfortunately for you, you won't get that past the Chamber Businesswoman groups. Sorry about that. Yeah. But Olga, we'll have her for sure. And we do. And I love having her there. But really is kind of like identifying what we call passion buckets. Like, which one do you fall into? What's important to you? You know, is it diving into, you know, workforce? Is it the business advocacy? Is it, you know, connecting and learning, or is it marketing and visibility? And you might dip your toe in several of those buckets, but what is it that you're most passionate about? And that's where I want to place you. And so, you know, obviously you got to go to a few different things that we have, and you probably can sit around the room and go, okay, where do I really want to connect? And that's what I want to do. I want you to connect in a way that is meaningful for you and aligns. Now, do we have members that truly understand the mission work that the chamber is doing, and that's what they invest in, and they don't go to anything? Yeah, we do. It's really about, what do you want to do with that? You can steer that ship however you want, but we're still going to be doing the work that we're doing each and every day, advocating for business and being the voice for businesses. And you telling us, hey, we're having this struggle. Like right now, big things that are happening. Of course, everyone now knows it's official. We're bringing flights back to Salem. And that's going to be cool for a lot of people. It's going to be cool for a lot of businesses. Yeah. We were a part of those conversations. And what I love is there's times where we have an issue, and you have this side that has their way of, this is how we feel about this issue, and this is how we feel about the issue. And here's what they don't know is they all kind of come together. Like, we just have a different way of getting there, right? What we want to do as a chamber is we want to bring those groups together and facilitate that healthy conversation, because we all want the same things. We just have a different way, an idea of getting there. We'll get there.
Speaking of that, so it just made me think about this. And you had said that you guys weren't, it was so packed, you guys weren't able to be in that meeting. So when I walked out with Jeff, I was like, hey, that was a little bit more exciting of a meeting than I thought it was going to be. And the part that got kind of interesting and exciting for me, as just, you know, I felt like I was just a visitor that day, and I'm just, you know, I didn't really know what was going on. Right. But when the mayor was talking, there was a few people that had parking concerns, downtown stuff. And then that conversation started to get a little, you know, but it was done well, respectfully. But I did think, like, wow, this is actually a topic, you know, like this, people are caring about this stuff. And so that part of that meeting, I was like, oh, okay, like now we're on to something here. And the discussions, and I thought the mayor handled it very well. And yeah, that was, for me, I feel like there's so much I don't know. So just going to that meeting was kind of eye-opening of like, man, there is so much going on. Kind of like what you said, Derek said, you know, like, hey, I'm a Salem guy. And then he did the leadership class course and then started to go, wow, I didn't realize all this stuff was going on in Salem. And now with my mission with the chair, I'm literally trying to figure all that out and story tell that in a way. And so yeah, I think me, River City, being a part of the chamber, it'll allow me access to a lot of stories and things I wouldn't really have access to or be able to know, or I don't know.
which fulfills your passion bucket.
Yeah.
Your passion bucket is, I want to know your story. And we've talked about this, and I felt like that was my kinship when I first started listening to your podcast. I'm like, this is a person who, understands that piece. And that's something that's very passion driven for me, which is why I like doing what I do. And I shared with you, and I listened to this on a podcast, I come from Hawaii, and, we talk about the word aloha, and everybody's joke is, doesn't it mean hi and goodbye? Like, yeah, okay, I get it. But I heard a gentleman kind of, ask that question, well, what does aloha mean to you? And he kind of goes into this backstory of immigration that took place in Hawaii years ago, of course, and different cultures. And they're all sitting at lunch, and everybody, the Hawaiians believed in sharing. And so everybody puts their food and we're all sharing, right? And if you've gone to Hawaii, there's fusion. There's a lot of food fusion that goes on and a lot of, different culture. So I took that. I'm like, you know what? We have aloha here in Salem. We're sharing all the time. And when you share your story and the platform you are giving to a lot of these folks, a lot of them being friends of mine. I'm making a new friend because of your podcast. That platform you gave them to tell their story, they are sharing who they are. And by that, it's being heard and seen by someone else that touches their soul. Mm-hmm. And so by that, you create community and you create culture. And then when we do that, we naturally start to do business with each other, right? Because we want to support that person. So then we create this healthy ecosystem, and we all together collectively, we just want to leave Salem better than we found it. Right. But how do we go about doing that? And everybody has their different channels of doing that, but we're all kind of trying to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. That is exactly right. And for me, I struggled for a long time trying to figure out what was that for me. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, this is I certainly have learned about me that I'm a one-on-one person. I really enjoy that time. Mm-hmm. I do get a bit overwhelmed with the bigger groups, mm-hmm. Of people. And I think it's because however God designed me and wired me is more that one-on-one thing. And then when there's a bunch of people and then I'm like, ooh. And so this has been great for like how I'm wired and suited. But some of those bigger groups is also helpful because then I'm meeting people, and which is nice I've had a few people on here that I've never met before. But it'll be good as I go about the community and get to meet them first out in the community and then maybe have them on and have a little background with them. So yeah. Well, now the good stuff.
What's your definition of good stuff?
The good stuff is, and you get it better than probably really anyone that's been tracking with this, because it seemed like out of the gates you kind of knew exactly what this was trying to be. Yeah. But yeah, your personal story and whatever you would want to share with that, and how you got here, and the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever that might mean. Yeah. Yeah, about you.
Yeah. And we talked earlier, the first time I got to meet you and Olga. And I think, again, that kinship, I could feel that even when I was sitting here, like when I thought about coming on today, I was like, okay, he's going to ask me stuff, but then I want to ask him stuff because it's in my nature to find out your story, right? And your nature to find out my story. And, both of us having that grounded in our faith mentality and being led to what our purpose is, because right, we were created on purpose, for purpose, and sometimes it takes us a little longer to figure out what that is, and sometimes we wonder, am I ever going to figure it out? But I think if you get to a place where you realize you are purpose, and it will come, and it came for you. I'm a military kid growing up. I moved around a lot. You had to make new friends. You had to start over a lot.
Did you I recently asked someone this, and I did because being a pastor's kid, we moved around a lot. Mm-hmm. Did you like being like the new kid at school, or was that not a positive thing?
No, and to take a step backwards, you talk about like the big groups and you like being home. And so I think where you and I are what they would call extroverted introverts.
Yeah.
Like when we need to be on, we will be on and we will do our thing and we'll be out there with the people and smiles are on. We got great energy. And then we get home and we shut the door. You're like, oh, I feel so good. What are you going to do this weekend? Nothing, and my fiance says, when he has seen me in that space and then he has seen me on the weekends and he's like, if people could see how you are on the weekends, they would not believe it's the same person because I'm just more quiet. I just like to read my book or binge out on whatever, maybe play some Angry Birds. I don't know. But I think that though that moving around part was hard. Like it was uncomfortable to be the new kid. And you walk into a classroom and all eyes are on you. I don't like that. I still don't like that. Ask Tom. I tell him all the time, hey, do you want to be on camera? Like kind of like I am right now. I'm like, no, I don't. I would rather put you on camera. I would like to shine the spotlight on you. That's how I am. I think that's, without realizing it then, that's how God meant for me to be someone's cheerleader, to be someone's support. And so, we moved around a lot and my dad eventually would retire in California and graduate. So I graduated in California from high school and I got married very young to someone I grew up in the church with. And, looking back at it now, I think I would have done some things differently, but my marriage was not what I had in mind at 21 years old. I married the pastor's kid and we grew up together. We understood our faith. And within 6 months, I didn't know who I married at all. And it became very tumultuous. It became very abusive, very volatile. But as you'll know, we were taught divorce was not an option in our faith. Mm-hmm. And I endured it for 7 years. It was hard. And I kept it a secret, I didn't want anybody to know. I mean, partially because you're kind of ashamed this is even happening. Like, how could you have this happen to you? Mm-hmm. But also because you didn't want the light on this really bad situation either. And you got to just work it out. So, went through a lot. And my family was aware, but I think they're feeling like maybe their hands were tied. I think sometimes when you're outside looking, you don't know, how do you get involved in that? How do you step in? Do you step in? Do you not step in? Because if you step in, do you make it worse for that person? You don't know. And
there's a lot of factors in that.
Yeah.
There's that part. There's like, if I step in and then, like if I'm stepping in on your behalf and then it's like, hey, you got to get out of this situation but then you get back together and then like, now I'm the bad guy
100%.
Because I tried to support you of, getting out of the situation, but then now you're back together and now, it is difficult to navigate that.
And there's no feeling of right or wrong. You just try to navigate your way through it. And I had multiple times where I made attempts to leave and they all failed. And 7 years later, I was living in Spokane now and I was isolated because my whole infrastructure was in California. And I didn't have a strong infrastructure there per se. In the beginning, his dad was a pastor at the church there. And, this was going on essentially behind closed doors because you don't want anybody to know. But I was doing real estate at the time and I had my office manager come up to me one day. She goes, if you don't think I know, I know. And you're just like, how do you know? And that really started to help me have a place that I can I can tell somebody. And, because I was in real estate, I had access to people who owned property And so I was able to find a place that was in a secured building. And I quietly had to wait till one day. He literally had to wait till one day he went to work, pack up just what was mine, and move into this condo. And it took him till the next morning, like, wait, what happened? But he couldn't find me. I mean, even though I was in the same town, no one was going to tell him where I was, and then he wouldn't have been able. So I hunkered down for a while. And that was the start of the end of my marriage. But, and it also became the path back to finding myself and finding my independence. I had completely lost my independence. And now I understand that more, how important it is to maintain your sense of self. You can be married, you can be in a relationship, but you can still hold on to your identity and who you are. Because again, it's two people coming to be one, but you're still individuals. You still have to be you. So that was hard. And then I chose to stay up there to the chagrin of my family, because I had this, I got to make it on my own. I could easily go back to California, and I could easily, live with my parents and things like that. But there was something in me that said, I've got to do this for me. And that played a role of me gaining that independence back. So yeah, I stayed up there. Years would pass, and I met my daughter's dad, up there. He played football up there, and, we subsequently would have a child together. And she is the reason why I am in Salem, for sure. Like I said,
I know how that goes.
Salem was not on the list. And, we weren't together. We weren't in a relationship. But he was from this area, and he was retiring from the league, and, kind of posed the question of, hey, what do you think about moving to Salem? Now, if you thought I sat there, I'm like, yeah, sign me up for that. No, I didn't. And I went to my pastor and his wife, and we prayed a lot about it, and we talked a lot about it. And a month later, I would make my decision to move here. And when you're a military kid, and if you have a parent who's deployed, you know what it's like to live without that parent for months on end, and it sucks. Now, then we're not in the military, but I didn't want my daughter to ever experience what it was like to be without her dad. So if it meant that I would have to give up 10 years of my life that I've built in Spokane, so my daughter could have a relationship with both of her parents, then yeah, that's what it was. And I'm not going to say that when I moved down here it was easy and all bed of roses. I'll be honest. 3 months into my living here, I had an oh crap moment. What did I get myself into? Because I'm essentially sharing a child with someone I barely know. I was living in his parents' house. We weren't together. We weren't going to be together. It's just like, what did I do? And I made some wrong moves. And I hurt him in the process, and I had to work my way back from that. And, he's an amazing co-parent. Like, if you're ever in a co-parent situation, like, I won the lottery on co-parents for sure. He's a great dad. He's a great co-parent. Just a really good friend. And it did not happen overnight. Like, we had to put hard work into it. Yeah. But when she's the center and she's the reason, it makes it easier. It makes it easier to get through those things. But we've navigated a lot of rough waters together. But we're bonded by our love for our daughter. And so I spent 3 years in Salem at home with a little one. So, I didn't know anybody in Salem. I didn't know who to call. I didn't have a social life for 3 years. Like, no adulting was happening for me. Like, it was like, hey, you want to go for drinks? Oh, okay. Share a glass of milk with my daughter. All right. And so, my daughter's grandmother came to me one day and said, hey, what do you think about volunteering for our nonprofit? You need to get out. You need to maybe this could help you kind of get your name out and socialize with adults and, kind of network a little bit. And that's when I got involved with the nonprofit and subsequently getting involved in the chamber because they were chamber members. And the chamber has been a huge part of my, not just my professional growth, but my personal growth. And I want to say if it wasn't for the chamber, I wouldn't be sitting here. I really wouldn't. And, you know, I'm sure I have friends in Spokane are looking at me like, they know me to be an outgoing person and a happy person, but being involved in all the things I'm involved in, no. I was go to work, go to the gym, go home, go to church, hang out with friends. That's it. That was my life. But the things I do now, being more involved in our community and just having that pulse and by way of the chamber is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that idea of, you know, in my head, when I think of a chamber of commerce, I would never really like take it as far as like, oh, I might meet some friends through that. Mm-hmm. You know, it's kind of stuck on that business networking thing. But you're kind of proof of like the level in which you're willing to put into something. Who knows what you could get out of it. And now you look back and you're sitting here saying like, man, I got some of my good friends here literally because of this business entity that then turned into friendships. I think even that's a good selling point for the chamber, to like your personal story of, man, I really like took advantage of this and got involved. And now some of these people have become my friends. I mean, I'm now saying this because of the podcast, like a few people that I never knew. And now they come over to my house and hang out quite a bit. Yeah. And so, yeah, just building that community. And that's not actually something that, when I first started doing this, I did think of a lot of the different things that are happening. I did kind of think of those things or hope they would happen. But one of them was not like, oh, I might actually just start being friends with some of these people. I thought I might do some business with them, might write their insurance or whatever, and that started to happen. But I didn't really think, you know, these people are going to be coming over, hanging out, hot tubbing with us, playing board games, card games, whatever. And so that's been a cool thing about building community. And yeah,
it's really instilled with me too, you know, my background of moving around a lot. I think, I don't know if I'd said it when you were there that day, but you'll hear me often say in these groups, remember what it means to be the new kid, right? Because I know what that means to be the new kid. I've been that new kid, and sometimes it's awkward and we don't know where to start. You're kind of like, this is really, what do I do? And so this welcoming ability that this community as a whole has to embrace people is a very powerful thing. And one of the things that I enjoy about what you're doing, and then of course what I get to do, is whether we realize this or not, you and I are both identifying the champions that are in this community, and we're helping to rise them up so other people can see what they're doing. And it's a really blessed and humbled position for you and I to be in, to identify these individuals. And, you know, as you and I talk about, a lot of them are our friends, and now I'm gaining friends. Ellen, getting to sit down with her, and just, you feel these kinships because of those stories. Andrea, I just freaking love that girl. And, you know, one of the things that was really hard for me growing up is friends. Now, you and I are at an age where back when we were in school, it was a lot of, there's no cell phones. There's no, let me text you, let me email you. Oh yeah, let's be friends on Facebook, right? It was like you had to sit down and you had to write a letter and you had to maintain that. Right. And that's all. People don't realize that's harder than keeping up. Like, I can easily pick up social media and comment on your posts, and like, that's how we'll connect and we'll stay connected. And so for me, and I get jealous of the gals that live here, that have lived here their whole lives, and they have these little, we've been friends since high school, junior high school. And there are these groups. I'm like, I didn't have that. So for me now, I am just loving the women groups that are my friends, and my tribe, as you'll hear a lot of us say, right? That tribe really came and birthed itself in this community. And I think I finally have gotten to a place where I have some really amazing women friendships. And I think getting to cheer them on in whatever it is they want to pursue, be there to listen for whatever they're going through, laugh, cry sometimes, whatever is needed. There's some freaking amazing women in this town and doing some pretty awesome,
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know what your podcast has, so I'm not going to, and I work for the chamber, so I'm not going to say the S word.
Well, on this show, you could say whatever you want, but because of your job, I don't know if you want to.
Right? I can see Tom going, ah. So my mom would say, don't shame the family. So, okay. Yeah. But they are. And I get to watch them, Nicole White, who's, if you know Mike White, his wife, now an entrepreneur, she's got Bar 3 downtown, and Kimmy Neal and the work, she does in that social media marketing, Cecilia Ritter. If you haven't met Cecilia Ritter.
I have not. But everyone those three you just listed, I've heard of them.
Yeah.
I have not met them.
Yeah, they are. I mean, there's so many more. And I just love, I think that's what I love about the gift, if you can look at it that way, of social media.
Yeah.
That we get to watch what each other does.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I came to find out what you do. It was because Jacob Espinosa's, friend of mine, and he posted about his time on the chair. And of course, I'm listening to him, and of course, I know Jacob's story, and have had the pleasure of calling him my friend and a coach. And so I'm like, what's this chair podcast? And I go through, I'm like, oh, I know Zach Stone, and I know Jason Conrad. I'm like, I know all their stories. And like, it was kind of cool for me to go through this little Rolodex that you had built. I'm like, I know all these people and I know their stories. But the joy I felt was someone really showed their stories.
Yeah.
And you gave them that platform. And I think I shared with you last night or the day before, where I said, the work you're doing, the impact is being felt outside of the borders of Salem, and so if we can keep elevating these individuals, and they're not celebrities, right? They're just, everyday people doing phenomenal things, and they have some very unique stories. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I get excited about. When 2020 hit, it was a rough year for everyone. Transitions, pivots, things like that. And for me, I exited the senior living ecosystem, and I was a stay-at-home mom for a few months. And it was actually a kind of a humbling time for me, but actually a fun time, because I got to be home with my daughter again, watching her do Zoom with school. That I don't want ever to do that again, because that was rough. But that time really stretched me. I had just gone through a breakup then. And when you're locked down, you're with your own thoughts. And if you're a gym person like me, you're like, where are we going to go? Mm-hmm. And so, like, the only
I went to the courthouse. They stayed open and
they
had
did
all that stuff.
the second go round, not the first go round, but the second. No, I am a courthouse member. Shout out to John Miller. Thank you.
So him and I are texting.
Yeah.
He's
a cool dude.
Someone asked, they were like, hey, would you have him on? I was like, yeah, send me his number. And so we've been texting. So I thought that might be an interesting
conversation,
because all I saw was that headlines. I don't really know exactly how that all shook out or whatnot. But anyways, I thought about that, and we've been texting, and so.
Well, when he stayed open, like, yes, power to the people, kind of a thing. It's like, and then it comes out that we stayed open, right? As a member, we got emails saying, hey, we're going to stay open. We're like, yay. And then, of course, it all came down on us, right? Because it got out. I'm like, snitches get stitches, dude. Like, come on. Like, why would you do that? Yeah. But I ended up having to find something. And I wasn't a person who liked to go out and walk. was a fair weather person. If it is below 70, it's not happening. If it's raining, it's not happening. And you really weren't left with a lot of choices then.
Yeah.
And so I started, well, okay, got to get out or I'm going to go nuts. And so whether it rained, whether it was cold, whether it was sunny, because it was obviously spring here, I went out and started walking through my neighborhood. And that's when I was really getting to dive more into different podcasts. And that opened the door for me to start writing. And I'm not the writer in the traditional, I'm writing a book sense. I was more reflective writing. You know, I'd hear a quote or to hear something I heard on the podcast and I'd reflect and then I'd write. And what was funny about that is before COVID, I'd see these little quotes and I'd send them out to my friends and I'd put my own commentary on it. And just because I think when you send positive messaging out, you're going to get positive messaging in, right? We need to be more of that. And then during COVID, I was still doing that a little bit. And I didn't realize I started being consistent on sending it on Mondays. Not really sure why, just like, that's a good thing to start the week with this. And so I started writing more and sending out more. And now it was starting to I was reflecting and I was using less quotes and just more of my, I thought about this, I'm going to share this. And one of my friends that I would send it to, she goes, one day she says, I love you Monday. And I'm like, that's what I'm going to call this. And so I started this little community called Love Monday. And I send out something of inspiration, reflection, whatever. And I've built it. I had a friend come to me one day, said, how are you sending this out? And I said, I just copy and paste it and I send it to my friends. And he was like, how many of these people are you sending it? I'm like, I don't know. And I counted. It was over 100 people.
Wow.
So he starts doing the math in his head. He's like, wait a minute. You're copying and pasting this to over 100 people. And I said, yeah. He's like, do you know how much time you're wasting? I'm like, I don't think I'm wasting time. But he's one of those website marketing people. And you guys think of the shortcuts. And he's like, why? And I said, well, I wanted the messaging to feel like it's directly a message to you. And if you felt it moved you or you had something you want to respond, it's only coming to me. It's not because sometimes the responses I would get were personal. And so he introduced me to a platform I could use where I can do one and click and out it goes. And so that following has continued to build and it's become a little passion project of mine. And I just recently partnered back up with Jacob Espinosa in the writing coaching, and he gave me a homework assignment last night. So I got to work on that. I'm going to get that done, Jacob. Don't worry. But that has helped from a healing, a growth, personal development, because that's where it all starts. It starts inward before it becomes outward. And, if you've ever gone through the outward mindset, it's an amazing program to go through. Sometimes we think we're thinking outward, but we're really not. And so for me, I had to go inward before I went outward. And the amount of growth personally I experienced has been kind of humbling. It's not fun. And when you have to have those hard conversations with yourself, it's not pleasant. But when you do it and you do that work and you come out on the other side, it's a pretty great thing. And that's been my therapy, and I still continue to grow that. I just added a couple more people to it just recently. So yeah, I love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, back when you were getting out of your first marriage, were you still going to church? How was your faith affected? And that I'm a pastor's kid. And my dad's actually in a current lawsuit with his former employer, which is a church that he served for. And my wife's dad actually used to be the head pastor of the church that my dad then, and he also had a tough exit, my father-in-law. So I say that to say, I know church pretty well.
Right.
I've seen it. I've seen all of it. I've seen the good stuff, the tough stuff. We still go to church. We're still Christians. We're still believers. But I'm curious, like, you were married to a PK.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting situation with what took place, and yeah, part of the Christian faith, definitely advocates for not getting divorced.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few things, biblically speaking, that,
Right.
Kind of say, yeah, you can now leave. So I was just curious when you were sharing that part of your story, if you stopped going to church, or if it wavered your faith, or, because it sounds like you still are a believer and go to church. And so as much as you'd be willing, I'm curious, because I've never been through something like that, and I don't know how that would have challenged my faith and my belief system.
Right.
To be married to a person that's supposed to be not doing these things.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that if that's not a testament to we're all still human beings at the end of the day, and we're all flawed, we're all sinners at the end of the day. Let's get that out there. So whether you have turned your life over and have a relationship with God, that doesn't mean like you're not going to mess up. You should be more guided, right? You have the more stronger principles to follow, but doesn't mean you still don't mess up. For me, sadly, his parents never knew. Never knew. I don't know if they ever found out. To be honest, we did a pretty good job hiding it.
If you could go back, would you not hide it? I asked Andrea something similar to this, or what advice would you?
Her and I talked about that. I think her and I agreed. I think we would have tried to be more open about it and tried to find someone that we could trust to kind of say, hey, here's going on. But it is hard to say. And it is like, okay, can you really trust that person? That's the fear, right? Because you're going to someone with the hope that you can speak in a safe way and be in confidence. And that's kind of the hard thing when you're in a church, setting, because we're all supposed to share each other's burdens, right? Okay, we're supposed to share each other's burdens, but let me be the person to share it, not you share it for me. And I think that's the kind of where the disconnect is. For me, towards the end, that was the church I was going to, right? It was his parents' church. And so, I was probably out of church after that, because I didn't know where to go. I was for about almost a year, maybe. And then there was one of our sister churches not too far. And I remember, as a matter of fact, my fiance and I talked about this one time, where I said, I know I need to go back. I need that church community, but like, it's kind of like a small town. Everybody knows, right? So now everybody knows your business. And I remember it took me 4 times to walk into that church. I would drive and then keep driving. And then the next time I drive and go into the car park, and then I come back out. And then I go next time, park, and okay, now go. And I think because I was afraid to be judged, I was afraid like they're going to know and they're going to judge me. And I didn't want that. And when I finally prayed about it and say, Lord, just give me the strength to walk through those doors, that church that I went to was exactly the church that God meant me to walk into, to be greeted with love. And we know, yes, we know, but we love you and we understand and we want you here. And I was at that church until I moved here. So I think when you are grounded in your faith enough, you know that he's always there. Mm-hmm. We just sometimes forget it. Mm-hmm. And we get consumed with our own way of thinking that we try to think we can do it on our own. Good luck. I think we've all done I can do this on my own. Like, he's like, yeah, okay, I'm going to let you try that for a while. And then he finds ways of reining you back in. And so for me, the faith never left. And I think, to be honest, how I navigated my life here was God's grace. If it wasn't for that, I'd probably be a different person. And by rights, I should be a really angry, bitter person for what I went through. 100%. I have every right to be. Mm-hmm. But what would that get me? Mm-hmm. It wouldn't get me very much. But maintaining the grace and the ability to forgive and love and focusing on those things have helped me be a better person. And it's not always easy to operate in that frame of forgiveness and love. Cause sometimes you just really want to punch somebody in the throat. I mean, let's be honest, you do, but is that the right way? No, it's temporary relief of, anger. But that's the thing. When you let anger consume you, mm-hmm. you're lacking peace within yourself. And, it really was having to make peace with God on a lot of things and then make peace with myself. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that I've always had the best of times. Mm-hmm. I've had a lot of struggles over the last 14 years. Matter of fact, we're in 23 now. So like December of 2021, I just came home from a trip to Idaho. My parents both had COVID and they're older. So it hit them really hard. That fear of like, holy crap. Like that was a wake up call, like the frailty of as your parents get older, and it sucks. And I come home, it's Christmas time. I'm single. I'm not with anyone. I don't have a partner. It's like, this really sucks. And I was okay being alone, but I didn't like being alone. And I wasn't going to I need to be in a relationship so I'm not alone, right? Because that's not the right thing to do. And I finally just had this moment where I had to be honest with myself and I had to be honest with God. And I'm like, what do I really want? And if I'm meant to have someone and I'm going to have a partner in my life, what does that person need to look like? And I literally wrote it down on paper, what this person had to look like. They had to be strong in their faith. There had to be someone that went to church. They had to be someone that I can pray with. All these things, right? Besides he has to look cute and he has to be handsome. It has to be a good job, Those are all like givens, right?
Yeah.
But those other things, when I was really honest with myself, that's what I needed mm-hmm. in my life if I was going to continue on and have a successful relationship. And then a few weeks later, there he is. So if it's manifestation, okay. But it was about just, for me, getting to a place of honest mm-hmm. with self. Mm-hmm. And when you get honest with yourself, get ready to be uncomfortable. Get ready to be uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. But good things will come out of it. You just got to stick through it. And I shared with you before we walked in here, like we did a quick pivot. I'm glad this is not airing anytime soon because my friends are going to find out here in a couple of days. So we just pivoted. We met with our pastor yesterday and we're going to get married next Saturday with our kids.
This will be funny when people are watching and listening because right now, actually, and I'm probably going to, I'll post a photo that you were here today and whatnot, but I've been meaning to post something else, letting people know that I haven't been putting out new episodes for a while.
I've noticed.
Because we're building out the website and the blogs and the news, all that stuff, and then we're gonna roll. And we also wanted to, for Daniel's sake, because he's had a million things going.
Thank you, Daniel.
is to give him some more time mm-hmm. to kind of get a few episodes all edited and done and then start this process again, mm-hmm. right? Like when we started, we didn't really know, is this going to be a thing? Are we going to keep doing this? It's certainly a thing now.
It is a thing.
We're going to try to take it to another level. And then it was like, why don't we pause a little bit, give Daniel some time to catch up. Let's build out this all this awesome stuff that Ellen gave us, and then start rolling stuff back out. And so I think like you're probably the 7th or 8th episode, and so when we start putting stuff back out, we'll already have months worth. And so, yeah, don't worry. You can.
Yeah, my cardio game's a little slow because I keep looking. I'm like, okay, what he's got. Oh, I mean, I've listened to all of them, so I mean, I'm glad to listen to again. But it's just like it's kind of like your favorite TV show. For me, it's a podcast because I don't watch as much TV as I used to. And I have my favorite go-to podcast. Oh, it's Wednesday. It's Trent Shelton Day. It's, Tuesday. It's Noble, Blood Day. Monday, it's Cubicle to CEO Day. Like,
well, and speaking of that, that's one thing that we were advised on is, hey, you really need to start having an actual day time, like, because the people that are really going to be tuning in, they're going to, have that set of like, this is when I do that. And so that was even another learning lesson for us. Because we're also not podcasters. I don't really listen to many podcasts. And so that was one thing she advised us on is you need to understand the people that are going to start really tracking with this, they're going to know when the new episode comes out and they consume that then or whatever. That was another reason that we felt like, okay, we need to pause for a second. Now that we're trying to turn this into an actual business, and eventually, offer things that, people could pay for, companies could pay for. That was another thing was, okay, we also need to actually start saying here's when these are coming out and treating it like a business as such. So,
I love it.
I have felt bad of not putting stuff out, but it'll be for the greater good as things get.
And that's what you just keep trying to teaser people, good stuff's coming. We're still doing the thing. And yeah, I've messaged Ellen a couple of times on Monday mornings. I'm like, girl, that one was fire. I love starting my Mondays. So I literally wake up on Monday mornings and I look and her episode has just landed in my inbox of my playlist. And literally, I'm getting ready for work, listening to her podcast and heading to work, listening to her podcast. And there's something about what we consume, and we talk about this, right? What you consume is just like the people that you surround yourself with. What are you consuming? We get on social media, and I'm not on Facebook as much. I'm probably live more on Instagram. I can and then you just get caught up in the scrolling. But what I consume is positive content. It's, how obviously I found you, and then I have great friends, and I listen to a lot of fitness things and a lot of, personal coach, things, and, from, Trent Shelton, Jay Shetty, those I just, love listening to those because I want to feed myself with good content. And so, when you decide on whatever day it is, that will be the day of the Chair podcast. And it's really great when you put out positive content because then people want to consume that. So then that's how that fan base really takes off.
Yeah. Well, and with Ellen, I mean, Daniel and I, Daniel has a bazillion kids and a day job, and then also a videographer and photographer. And now he sits up at night and edits all this stuff. And I've not paid him anything, but he is now, or soon on paper, will be the co-owner of the Chair. And we will build this thing together as we've been doing. But one thing that for me, I'm like, oh, that would be so nice is, Ellen's like, yo, all these episodes, these are preloaded, ready to go. I already have them in the system, and it auto releases because I already have these ones ready. So that was another part to oh, that would be so, because literally, we've been going for 7-8 months now. It'll just be whenever Daniel had time to get stuff done, and then he'll send it over or upload it to YouTube, and then I'll go on and do. And it's been all over the board because it is what it is. He's got other priorities and responsibilities that trump this. So I'm so looking forward to some of this automation and having some of this stuff already done where, like you say, I wake up and it's already there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was already done weeks ago.
Yeah.
Where what I've been doing lately is, I've been manually doing everything, like the messaging. When someone sends me a message and then I'm trying to explain what the chair really is or what I'm trying to do, I look forward to being like, oh, click this link. And then they can kind of read and fill out, or is this a fit for me? Do I want to do this? So yeah, I'm so looking for it's kind of like what you were saying with, like, you were, sending out those text messages to 100 people individually. And there's a part of that is dope because it's like this personal touch. But then there's another part to it where it's like, well, if I could become more efficient with this, I could do even more.
Right.
And so that's how I'm viewing this kind of stuff. Some of this stuff will stop necessarily being Trav responding to all the stuff, but some of these automated features will allow me more capacity to do even more of this stuff.
Exactly.
And I'm really looking forward to that because I feel like when people have messaged me, like, if you could look through all my DMs, especially on Instagram, that's where most people hit me up. And then I'm like, I don't have like a copy paste thing. It's like in the moment, they'll be like, so like, exactly what is this? And it's like, every time I write that, it's not exactly what I told the other person.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to being like, go to this link. And then everyone's reading the exact same thing of what this is, the conversation we're trying to have. Because I recently had someone on here and I thought I had explained kind of the conversation that I try to have with it. Apparently I hadn't explained that well enough. And so it wasn't a bad conversation, but it wasn't exactly what I normally do. And so I think we're going to redo that with this person. And it was a good learning lesson for me of, yes, all these different automations and whatnot that will be put in place, then everyone will be reading the same thing and hopefully have the same understanding of what conversation I'm trying to have. This person thought they needed to talk a lot more about their business. And so most of the conversation was about how they formed their business and all that. And then there was a few times that they kind of started to go personal, but then pulled back. And I read the pulling back as they didn't want to really go there. So I didn't dig on it. But then when we were done and took the headphones off and started talking about it, they were like, oh, I didn't think you want, and I'm like, that's exactly like, and they were like, oh yeah, like I tried committed suicide and I actually died for like 30 seconds at the hospital. And I'm like, that's what I want. Yeah. Like, that's what I want viewers to hear about you if you're willing to share that.
Right.
So anyways, yeah, I'm looking forward to having some of these things that as this grows, and it's, I every week I'm having people now reach out and, hey, how do I get on? It'll be great to have some of this stuff set in place, automated, and then just be able to do more of it.
I think if people take the time to watch your podcast or listen, whatever their preference is, and really understand what you're trying to do. We all have stories from whether it's based on your whole entire life or a chapter in your life. When you're willing to share that, again, you don't know who's going to be listening, who it's going to impact, but be willing to have that time of telling your story. And even if you think you're sitting there going, no one's going to want to listen to this, no one's going to want to hear this, there's someone, even if it's one, someone will want to hear that. And, I think for me, it's a very brave thing too, and it's very vulnerable. That was my word of 2021 is like, get vulnerable. You're like, I don't like it. This feels very weird. But there's something that can come out of it if you, again, shift your mindset to being vulnerable. Is why when you can look around this world, some great things have happened because somebody got vulnerable. Somebody shared their story. And because of that, all these things, this domino effect gets to happen. And so, yeah, to that person, I would say, you know, you're in a room and it's just the two of you, and just tell your story.
I've had a lot of people ask me, what questions are you going to ask me?
Oh, yeah.
There is no preloaded questions. I don't know. It's been so funny. That's been one of the more funny things when people will ask about it, or, you know, and they're like, well, what questions? And I'll go, I don't know. You're going to start talking and then I'm going to ask you questions.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you're leading it, and then I just go off of that.
Right.
And I couldn't do the preloaded questions anyways. That's not how I'm wired. That's not how I'm built. I would sound dumb. I would sound goofy. It wouldn't be like how I am. I have to just free, you know, will it.
I did not ask you that. I just said, please don't let me sound stupid. That was my only requirement. Like, I did not ask about, I think if you said, okay, here are the questions, that would freak me out a little bit more. Yeah. I mean, maybe I'm different from everyone else, but because I'm like, okay, how do I want to answer? And then I'm thinking so much about the answer. Right. I'm now no longer in the moment.
Correct. And that's why I can't do it. I can't think about the questions because I won't be in the moment. Or you'll say something and I'll miss that little
because you're trying to get to the next question.
Because I'm thinking about the formal question I'm about to ask you. And I've only had a few people say that. Actually, I would probably say I only had one person say so far that they would have preferred questions, but that's just how they're wired and structured, that would have been a better fit for them. But for what I'm trying to do for listeners and watchers is have it to where a person that's listening or watching would feel like, oh, yeah, that would be like a conversation I would be having with that person, just like a normal conversation. That's what I want the feel to be. And, you know, one day I'll share my story, and I've thought about that. Like, I need to put my feet in your guys' shoes. And I know I'll be a little nervous to do that. But I also know, like, once you push past that, there's usually always more positives that come out of it than negatives. There really is. Like, the people that can be impacted by someone's story. I mean, so far, the results of what has happened so far are clearly that. There's been a few things that, you know, but that's life. I mean, some of our stories are intertwined and a little messy and, you know, but in general, there's been a lot of cool stories from all this stuff. And I think that's why I keep pushing this so hard, is because I know that part. I know that if people are willing to be vulnerable, and for the people that are like, no one wants to hear my story, like Tom, I'm like, you know what, I do.
Yeah,
I'm asking you, like, you know. Right. And so, but people do, though. People, it's easy to be like, no one wants to hear my story. I'm telling you, even if it's just your friends and your family, you know, they might learn something
they didn't know.
That, I had someone on here that told me beforehand, hey, I might share something if I feel led to, that like my friends and family don't even know about me. And so even if it's just that, but it's never just that. There's other people that are listening and watching that are relating as well. And you know, that's just how it is. That's never going to go away. That's just how it is. And that's why I'm trying to, you know, try to make people a little uncomfortable with this idea. But overall, there's been really cool feedback.
You know, and I've lived here now for almost 14 years, and I have a lot of good friends. You know, I didn't start off, you know, my time when I would meet people for coffee and go, let me tell you how I came to Salem. I didn't tell that story for a while. Partially was like, am I going to get judged for that? Like, I'm a single mom, not in a relationship with this person I had a child with, and all these things. And so I didn't share that right away. Very few people. And there's probably going to be a lot of people in my life that didn't even know I was married in my 20s. Like, that my child did not come out of a marriage. I was actually married in my 20s. You know, I'm now in my 40s. And those who knew I was married, like, yeah, I was married in my 20s. They don't know the horror that I lived through.
Mm-hmm.
That was a hard thing. You know, someone you've known since you were 6 years old, kind of grow up together, you're taught the same things. How did I miss that this person had some really deep anger issues?
Mm-hmm.
And I became the punching bag. And the triggers. I mean, the triggers that would set this person off. I mean, I remember a day where I took off work and we were going to spend the day together. And we went to Starbucks. We were in the drive-thru. And we're getting our coffees, and they were handing the coffee out the window. And I think they had filled it too much. You know, sometimes you can grab it wrong and the lid will pop off. Well, that had happened, and coffee had spilled on him, and he was wearing light colored pants that day. And I remember he got so irate over this. And I'm like, I get it. Like, it sucks. And like, it probably, hurt a little bit because it's hot. But in my mind, like, it's fixable, right? We can fix this. And I thought, we haven't started our day. We can just drive back home real quick, change clothes, and off we go. No, we went home, but he switched into his comfy clothes and sat on the couch, turned on the TV. I'm like, but are we going to go anywhere? And he was like, no, I'm done. And I didn't understand that. The problem with me then is like, I didn't recognize this, like, don't poke the bear. Except I didn't think I'd poke the bear. Like, no, we should be. And that anger now, instead of being on the situation that happened now it's on me.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm the target.
Mm-hmm.
That was life all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you think about those things, what you don't realize it's robbing you of is so much. Your tank is constantly emptying.
Mm-hmm.
Going into the energy of trying to appease and make peace with this other person and trying to get them, plead with them to please don't be angry. Please don't do this. For me, I became a shell of a person. My mom even said, she's like, I don't know where my daughter went. And it would only be almost 2 years later after my divorce that my mom goes, I'm getting my daughter back. And so it is sharing things like that is for women, that you are stronger than you believe. You're not a shell of a person. Recognize that when you're pouring so much and filling someone else's cup and emptying your own, that's a red flag. Mm-hmm. And you need to lean into that. Mm-hmm. And you need to probably make some decisions, and you need to probably have conversations. I shared with Andrea, I even suggested that they go through counseling because she mentions that a little bit, kind of in hers. And
mm-hmm.
I said, well, I remember that. And I remember just pleading, please, let's go to counseling. And I wasn't like, you go to counseling. I said, let's us go to counseling. Mm-hmm. And I remember one day he had finally had it. And he said, if you ever effing tell me we're going to counseling or talk about counseling, and I will effing kill you.
Mm.
Is that what a husband should say to a wife? And I went through a lot, being stalked by my own husband at work. Like, that's not fun. Mm-hmm. But you start to lose yourself.
Yeah.
And you don't even know it's happening. It's stuff like that I never shared with people, because it wasn't like I didn't think that they should know. I was afraid of the judgment I would get.
Right.
For that.
Right.
Like, somehow I was going to be seen as, what'd you do wrong? You should have done this. Well, maybe you did this. And I didn't.
So with that being said, this person that I referenced, business owner, that kind of thought this was more about the business.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that they said was, when I was like, no, I really wanted that personal side. The good stuff, the bad stuff, mm-hmm. all that. And this person said, I kind of was also thinking, like, being recorded on here. I'm a business owner, mm-hmm. multi-million-dollar business. If I was to be that vulnerable, maybe it would look like weakness. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, I said, tell me this. The last time you heard someone share something mm-hmm. vulnerable, did you view them weaker or stronger?
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, yeah, not weaker. And I was like, that's part of like why I'm doing this is I get that natural, we all have that feeling of like, I mean, I do, you know, I got all kinds of stuff, part of my story that I feel like if I share, is it going to make what the chair is different for people? You know, if I really am honest about who I used to be, because to be frank with you, some of the way you're describing your first husband, and not to the level that you're describing, but some of the reaction or the anger, that was me in my first marriage. I was the pastor's kid that was quick to anger. You know, and so like I get it. Like I have thought like if I'm really vulnerable about me, like, because how I live now is different than how I lived then. Mm-hmm. Who I am now and how I treat people is much different than then. But so I totally understand the thought of, you know, if I share some of these things, you know, will I now be, because now people are patting me on the back for the chair and this kind of stuff. And then I think like, oh, will it devalue the brand, if you will? But it won't. Like, I know that. I know eventually when I get into my stuff and share my story, most people won't think less of the chair because of that. Maybe there's a few, but that's something that I think that's some of the most powerful things is when you're able to share and be vulnerable, tough things in a respectful manner. Mm-hmm. I'm never going to let anyone on here name call, name drop in a negative way. If you want to do positive shout outs, feel free, say whoever you want to say. I'm never going to let anyone drag anyone through the mud through here. That'll never be what this is. But in a appropriate, respectful way, there's so much power for people to share these things on different levels for other people to hear and also for that person. Mm-hmm. And I've said this a few times. I think Cole Johnson probably comes to mind the most with this. Because the day we did his, he had taken his oldest daughter to the airport. She was flying for her mission. And he was super sad that his oldest was going away. And he said he went back home that day from the airport and climbed in bed with his clothes on and thought about texting me to reschedule. And I only met Cole one time at basketball hoopla during the summertime. So he had like no tie to me. Like he could have easily just said, I'll do this another time, or I don't even want to do it. But he still showed up. Mm-hmm. And when we were done, he was like, man, this almost felt like a counseling session today. And that is one of the few things that I did not think through when I started this, was how would it be for the person sitting in the chair? Mm-hmm. What would their experience be? I kind of was thinking about all the, like, who would they affect? Or they'll talk a little bit about their business. And so maybe their business would make more sales because of this. But I never really thought about, like, what will the experience for the person just sharing this stuff? And that has been one of the most enjoyable things for me, is that piece to this, where I've had people say like, man, I haven't thought about this in forever. Mm-hmm. You know, I never like, because how often do you sit down with people and they really go like, tell me your story. Right. Like, think back to these things that you never think about. Right.
We're very surface though. Think about it. If you're sitting down to someone like I do when I sit down to coffee with somebody, we're kind of very surface. Like, we're going to tell a little bit about our story. We're going to tell a little bit, but this deep dive that we're doing and that you have been doing with other people, those don't come out at coffee conversations with just anyone. It is about feeling safe. That I can feel, you know, granted, this is going to be seen by other people, but in the context of this moment, there's safety in it. Yeah. You know, when you and I sat down for the very first time, and I was here not for this.
Right.
Definitely was not here for this. I'm like, okay.
In the
okay,
capacity
right?
of River City Insurance join
the chamber, right?
Yeah.
I was in that, and I was kind of like, Naomi, don't. Remember, this is the River City, and it's kind of like the same way I felt about Nat Borchers. Nat Borchers is the owner of the 45th Parallel, and if anyone knows Nat Borchers, he's retired, professional soccer player.
Soccer. Yeah.
And you're like, and we're a soccer family, and definitely watch Nat Borchers. You're just like, okay, Naomi, behave yourself. He's the business owner. Like, don't do something stupid. So for me, don't geek out. Like, and I love that. I love seeing people like you. I think of you guys as celebrities, and I think that's the celebrity I want to get excited about. But I think that it is a place of therapy, is a place of safety. And when you and I talked, one of the things that really just struck a chord in me when you said that growing up as a pastor's kid, sometimes in the family business, right? You're thinking, well, my dad did it, so I'm going to do it. This is the family business. Because there are family legacy businesses,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But you said, I never got the call. I never felt the Holy Spirit moving in me to say, this is going to be your path. But when you got to a place where I go, okay, I know this isn't going to be my path, but there's something. And you got to this place where you're like, I think this is where I'm supposed to go. This is your mission work. Mm-hmm. This is the calling that you've been called to do. You're doing servant work in a very different capacity, in a very different look than what your dad did. But you're getting into the lives of so many people and saying, let's talk about this. I think when you get to a place where you're ready, right? And you'll know, and you tell your story, I think the way I look at it is you will solidify the mission of the chair. You will solidify exactly why you started doing it this way. People were like, holy crap, I get it now. And we talk so openly, like I've told you that a kinship to you, like we're the same. Mm-hmm. But we're doing it from, again, different perspectives. And I love that you invite people in, you make them feel safe, and you say, your story matters. And that is powerful. So powerful.
Yeah. I told Olga before you got here, I was like, this one with you, I think in some ways this has been my favorite one because you have been championing this for a while, mm-hmm. even before you knew probably who I was. Yeah. Because I would just get messages to the chair, but no one knew when I first started it. No one knew who I was,
right?
Because I don't ever on Instagram put myself on there. But you always said really kind things. You would send me people like, hey, talk to this person. Yeah. And I remember when you first started doing that, and I was thinking, how does this person know who all these people are? Because I didn't know you worked at the chamber.
Right.
And so, and then once I realized that, it was probably like once Jacob came, and then it was like, oh, okay, now that's starting to make sense. And then, River City joins and you come here. And now hearing your story, it makes a lot more sense for me when you said like, hey, we're kind of doing the same thing, just in different ways. Mm-hmm. Like I'm understanding that more. But I've really appreciated, all the kind words that you've said even before you knew who I was. And I definitely can see how, like, I get that now, like how we're the same and what mm-hmm. we're trying to do and how we see life. And so, I was really looking forward to doing this with you, and you've been very humble about it and kind. And so, yeah, I appreciate all that and how you've championed, the chair, and I know that you'll continue mm-hmm. to champion the chair. But yeah, I was really looking forward to You just like, you've really understood what it was. So that part was like easy for me to do this with you, because it's like you totally get what I'm trying to do here.
So it makes my reaction when you ask me like more clear, like, well, what? And I remember sitting next to David, my fiance. I remember sitting next to him like, holy crap. He's like, what? I don't think I'm reading this right. I'm like, did you see that? Like, is he asking me? And I did. I had them like, he's not asking me. Like, is he asking me, like, does he need my help? Like, does he, like, does he need me? I gave him people. So I just like, I was super humbled by it, because I am the girl who I have actually did, I don't know if you ever done this. Andrea and I talked about this, enneagrams, and I did the test, and I forget. And I think I talked to Ellen about this too. I am, when you look at the description, I'm the girl who likes being behind the scenes and pushing everyone forward. I want to, support you. And like, what do you do? Okay, let me go tell somebody else about it. Like, I like doing that. I don't like being in this position. This is not, I'm sitting here feeling like, okay, I'm kind of like trying not to wiggle on my seat. But so I was super humbled by your ask, and, of course, like confirming last night, and it's like, okay, crap. Okay. So what do I, what am I going to say? I don't, but yeah, when someone comes from a servant's heart and servant leadership, it makes it really easy to support. It makes it easy for me to want to champion that, because you understand community, you understand the human spirit, and you understand we're all living this big thing called life. Mm-hmm. And we have chapters in our lives, some good, some bad. And we just, to take a line from a movie, and I use it a lot, we all have parts to play. We just need to be allowed to play them. This is your part. This is the part you will play in other people's lives. And so when they go on and they run into people, or they connect with other people because I saw you on the chair, and again, love Jacob, love Jason, love Zach, Ellen, my brain's going nuts trying to think of these people, but when you put Andrea on, and I never met her, and I heard that she worked where she worked. Yeah. I'm like, how did I not know about her? First of all, from a chamber standpoint, I'm like, failure on my part. I know all her teammates, but I didn't know her, but because of the work you're doing, because of that heart that you're coming with, and you put her in this chair, her story woke up a sleeping story in me. And I'm like, I can go tell somebody my story, and I can be so vulnerable with this person. And to sit across from her, I felt like the hours didn't really pass by until we're like looking at our clocks. We have to go. We're like, oh crap, we got to go pick up our kids. We're like, okay, part 2, we're going to have to do a part 2. I felt like I could breathe again telling that story with her. And she has, I've had more details than I've shared here today, but, it's hard when if you can think about it, think how hard it is to hold your stories in, because sometimes things trigger it and you're reminded. You're like, okay, but you don't tell anybody. Mm-hmm. There's something very freeing about sitting in this chair, and freeing about saying, this is who I am. I'm flawed. I'm not perfect. I'm just living life like you. I've made some good choices. I've made some bad choices. I've had some good, and I've had some not so good. Mm-hmm. But if we all have the mindset that we're all in this together, we can make this a really beautiful thing. Yeah. We can. Yeah. So I appreciate you, and I'm thankful God gave me the eye to look out for people like you. I'm like, okay, it's so funny. Like, I have friends, I've given them to you, Mike White, definitely one of them. I've given you Devin Grogan's, I'm like, you need to talk to these people.
Yeah, believe me, my wife made an Excel spreadsheet. And I mean, you know, the plans of what we're building. And once I can build that thing out and get a lot of these things automated, then it's going to make it a lot easier to really start, you know, doing even more. And the reality is like, we got time, and I'll keep going after people, and I know people will also ask, and
that's a good that they're asking.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of a testament to like, I want to be a part of that, but I hope that when they're asking, they're recognizing again, this is not about necessarily sharing what you do, because that's not the core of you, right? That's just what you do. The core is a whole different thing. That's the thing that's going to live with you to the day you die, you know? And so, yeah, there's a lot of people, like, I'll keep sending you, I still want you to get in front of people like Cecilia Ritter and Kimmy Neal. Like, those women are rock stars. Like, absolute rock
keep sending
stars.
me the women. I always tell people it's easy for me with fellas because I know a lot of dudes.
Right, a lot of dudes, yeah.
But like trying to know people like you, that, you know, you're in that women's space too. You know, a lot of those events that literally I'm not invited to, right? So it's like, you know, so I'm always like trying to connect with more women, because I don't want this just be a dude show. So that's something I'm actually diligent about. Like I go out of my way.
I will
to
find
try
you
to
some. Don't you worry.
that.
Yeah.
Which I met someone yesterday, and that was a fun conversation with her. One of the things I really enjoy, and I've told Adrienne to either, she now watches on YouTube. She used to just listen, but now she watches. But I told her, I said, watch people's face and their body language when I ask them to now talk about themselves, because it is crazy. I mean, every single person, the moment that when I'm in person with someone that I explain what this is and what I'm really after, it is amazing. People's guards go down. They usually smile. There's like this, like, oh, like that's what you're after, and this like joy that comes over them. And so that's been really fun for me, because now I've done enough of these that I'm seeing patterns to different things.
Nice.
And probably the coolest pattern is when I'm able to explain and they understand what I'm trying to do. Almost every single person has had that same type of reaction of, oh, that's, you know, like, oh, you don't want to just talk about the business. Because to be honest, some of these, you know, heavy hitters that have been on here in this community, quite frankly, before we recorded, they kind of told me like, Trav, doing this because I'm kind of tired of always talking about my business, or having people ask like, you know, how'd you go from 1 to 10 to 50 to 100 to, you know, how'd you make all this money? So that's also been an interesting piece too, is, and obviously they love their business, else they wouldn't be doing that, and their success. But that's been an interesting piece as well, with them saying, man, this is kind of refreshing for me to like just tell my story and not be asked, you know, essentially, you know, how do you make so much money, or, you know, how are you so successful? So it's amazing what that personal side does. It honestly, it levels the playing field. That's what like, I've done enough of these where it's like, I don't care what your title is now. The moment I start saying what this is about, doesn't matter how much money you make, doesn't matter how many employees you have, it humanizes it. And then it just levels it. It levels the playing field. And that's been really fun for me. And it's taken a lot of pressure, quite frankly, off of me, I don't really care if you have millions of dollars or if you don't, because that's not really what we're going to talk about. And so, and I think it takes the pressure off the person, because then, you know, I have people not feeling like, well, their company's bigger or they're more successful, or that doesn't matter. We're not comparing those things.
Mm-hmm.
We're just talking about you and your story. And we can't compare that to someone else's.
No. And if you think about it, so the way that I say this a lot in our women's group. One of the things I love to do is I'll ask for volunteers and they'll give me their business cards, and I go back to my office and I'm like, okay, I'm going to match make these folks. Now I don't know if they know each other already. I'm going to do best guess that they don't, but the instructions that these ladies get is that you're not going to coffee with each other to go learn about each other's business, right? That naturally trickles in. But what I say is I want you to go out and learn about each other as women, because the way that I say it is, at the end of the day, you're not Olga, owner of River City Insurance. You are a mom. You are a wife. You're someone's daughter. You're someone's friend. You're someone's sister. That's who you are. Mm-hmm. You go home and shut the door. Mm-hmm. You're no longer what you were doing that day. You're home. You're being mom. You're doing the wife. That's who you are. And then you're kind of confronting some things like, I love, I'm going to read, whatever you want to read or whatever you get into. That's who you are. And when we can learn how to get out of our own way and strip away the fact that I work for the chamber or, you own XYZ business, that's what we're left with, right? Because I can, do something else tomorrow, but I'm still going to be someone's wife. I'm going to still be someone's daughter, right? That doesn't change. That never changes. So I think when you offer that human side of us and you strip away our titles, you strip away like I'm, Fortune 500 company, what do you have left? You're still the guy next door. You're still the girl next door.
Right.
And that's it's a powerful thing. Mm-hmm. A really powerful thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm sure Tom wants you back. Time to come back to work.
Well, secretly I am on PTO this week, but but yeah, he would feel like that. But yeah, I love his leadership, his mentorship, his friendship. Those are all things I equally value from him very much. And so he has a story. He has a story to tell.
Keep bugging him.
I'll just keep poking him
about this.
I'm going to use the leverage that I'm 5 days older than him, and you should really listen to your older sister. See what he says. See if that gets me anywhere. But yeah, he's definitely someone, again, born and raised here in Salem.
Yeah.
Lived here his whole life, and the trajectory that he has been on. I think what I love about him the most is he is someone that deeply understands operating from a servant's heart.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
He should actually be someone teaching what that is and what that looks like and how to have that. And I don't think he gives himself enough credit.
Yeah. I mean, I look at the role that he's serving in right now, being the CEO of the chamber. And before him, was it Nick Williams?
Yeah, Nick Williams. Mm-hmm.
And I look at that role, and I've talked with Nick about coming on here. And it's like, how could you do that role if that's not kind of in you to be that way, to see things that way. And so that's why I have friends that know him. And he talked about watching Chad's episode because they went to Sprague together.
Yeah.
And then I got a buddy, Justin Maduri, who a while back, Justin was like, I'll text Tom right now. I went to high school with him too, and so, telling you one of my secrets right now about the chair. I don't, other than Olga and my wife, I don't think I've actually said this, but one of the ideas when I started this was, hey, wonder if we build something that champions everybody, even champions the champions, like the Chamber of Commerce. Yeah. Wonder if we have the people that are out championing every day and we have them on and we champion them. Yeah. And so I had thought well, that would be neat to have. At the time, I didn't know who Tom was or whatnot, but I had just thought whoever's giving leadership to that person has to be that way, championing of other people. So that would be cool to have, that person on here. And because I already know they're going to be that humble person. They're going to be like you, where you're like, really? You know, like, you want me to come in, and it's like, yeah, like you guys are some of the people, the exact people that I want to do this for. To be honest, some of the business owners, they got tons of notoriety, you know? So in that regard, they don't need to be on here for notoriety, or what their business already is that. But like for people like you and what you guys do, that's the fun part that I like, is because you guys are the people that, to be honest, like, don't really want to do it, or like in a way, like, because you're used to everyone else. So hopefully, you know, one of these days, you know, Tom would be willing to share his story, because I think it's a neat, like, your guys' platform and what you do is, you know, it would be neat for people to really know you guys and your guys' story, because I mean, I haven't been around the chamber much, but I don't know if that's something you guys really do.
It's passion driven. I mean, you work at the chamber, it's passion driven, and we have a passion for our businesses. And, you know, we have, you know, the phrase of, when businesses thrive, the community prospers, and it's for a reason. And so when we're championing for these businesses, and we're cheering you on, and we want to see you be successful, we know what that equivalates for our entire community. Mm-hmm. And you do have to have passion for that work. And, you know, sometimes it's, you know, stressful and you want to pull your hair out. And sometimes it's like smooth sailing, but it's the up and downs of what we deal with. And, when you have a great leader like Tom at the helm, and understands the choppy waters, but also understands when it's rainbows and sunshine as well, you know you're in good hands, and you know the community's in good hands. And so, yeah, I think when you have someone who understands the passion work of the chamber, of our chamber, then it just makes it exciting to show up every day. And, you know, like, it might be hard today, but we're going to do some great things today.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, keep sending me people.
Especially
course. People like you guys. That's fun for me. The people that are always behind the scenes or championing other people. Congratulations next week. When you guys are all listening or watching this, she will be married.
I will be married. Yeah. I will be the new Dubs. I tell Nick, I'm the new Dubs in town. My last name will start with a W. So it's like, I'll be the new Dubs in town. So I've fallen in the alphabet, but that's all right. Dubs is a good letter. So yeah, I'm super excited. We're doing it. You know, talked earlier about being our authentic selves. I told you what we're going to be doing. That is authentically us. We'll have, you know, by the time this airs, I'll have seen the photos of what we're doing, and it's just us. It's just us and the kids and our pastor. And
actually, speaking of that, Daniel, maybe when we put this episode out, you can give us some photos, and Daniel can put them in there.
I don't know, what is it that Zach does do right
here?
What
did he do?
He's like, he was doing something.
Yeah, and then Rick Saffields did the same thing.
Yeah, Rick Saffields was hilarious. And then next, I was like actually waiting for it. And then like he kind of like has this frozen smile. So when you're watching it, when you're hearing it, it's not so, you're like, okay. But when you're watching, it's really funny. He's like, right here.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Rick's a neat guy.
He's pretty, I love watching his work. And again, another championing for others. And that's what we're doing. And when you identify the champions, you kind of just infuse more energy, and you're basically telling them like, yeah, keep doing that. And like, 'cause sometimes you got to be wondering like, dude, do I keep doing this? And then when you have moments like this, you're like, there's that second wind that you get from people. So yeah, Rick, keep doing it. So yeah.
Well, thanks so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Appreciate you.